This is the Pulse Beat. It's said that every inspiration starts with a spark, and we're here to ignite a fire. Join us as we showcase conversations from esteemed experts in a multitude of specialties. You'll find experts discussing topics that stimulate, inspire, and encourage. From the famous and familiar to the lesser known, the Pulse Beat will be your go-to for stirring up a sense of truth and optimism. A podcast that pulses truth with every interview and story, bringing hope into dark places.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Pulse Beat podcast. I'm Mike Smith. I am a former NBA basketball player and now a Cardio Miracle user, a man who is committed to fitness for life. I am 59 years old and I've raised 10 children. I am a golfer, in my own mind, pretty good, pickleballer. I still try and do those things, and I work out every day. Up in the left corner is one Keith Clearwater, 63 or 4 years old, and father of 4 and grandfather of 11, Keith, or 12? 11?
Your brain works well.
Okay, so it does. And a former PGA Tour Rookie of the Year, a college All-American in golf, a 2-time winner on the tour, and still not only a health advocate, but I would summarize really quickly Tiger Woods before Tiger Woods in terms of fitness, lifting weights, dedication to supplements, and knows a lot about taking care of his body when he was early on the PGA Tour. That's in the late 80s and through 90s. That's before Tiger emerges on the scene. And our guest today is one Stanford Graham. Stan, my introduction, hopefully I don't, botch it or anything, but I know you're an actor by trade. You got those movie star good looks. I meant lawyer by trade, excuse me. But you got those movie star good looks and those flowing locks. I know you've been an actor as well. And I know one of your quests in life not only was to be fit and stay fit, but I'm guessing the number 4 minutes, 25 seconds, and 30 some odd seconds would ring true to you, right? Is that about your mile best after the age of 50? And how close are you to setting the world record for the mile after the age of 50?
Well, damn close. If I was a Cole Hawker.
Oh my gosh, did that guy put on a performance?
Oh my gosh, dude. I can't tell you I don't know how many times I've watched that finish. The race. So it's just truly inspirational. He bested his best time by 3 seconds. By 3 seconds.
Yeah.
If you convert that time to distance at that pace, I mean, you're talking you're talking 15 meters, 20 meters. I mean, it's just extraordinary. More than that, extraordinary, because his finish time, he was flying that last 100 meters. When he tried to pass Ingebrigtsen on the inside and then slowed up, he slowed up, repositioned, saw the gap, and shot through it. Yeah. It's phenomenal. So, yeah.
I loved watching those Olympics. They were fantastic. And the track and field part is my favorite. I love the swimming, but the track and field just gets me excited.
Well, you get to see the grit and the gut that the human is capable of, that the heart of a human and the mind of a committed human. Cole, I don't know if you heard his interview, when he came around that sub 200, right? 1,500 meters, and the race is in the 200 meters. It's the last 200 meters. That's the race. I massive props to Ingebrigtsen, because he went out front. He ran from the front the whole time, which was a total. That was inspiring. That was a Prefontaine move, man. That was just I'm going out, and if I can't win this way, I don't want to win.
And the Englishman Kerr ran a phenomenal race.
Phenomenal. So, extraordinary race. And to see Ingebrigtsen come in fourth there, but then to just kick everybody's butt in the mile,
Crazy.
Just another 100 meters, man. The guy's the king. So extraordinary. So it's it's interesting. You guys on the links, Mike, on the court, they those things don't lie to you. The track doesn't lie to you.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Right? It will always tell you. It'll always give you honest feedback. The club will always give you the feedback of physics, man.
Well, saying that, that's the reason I fell in love with golf. It's the most democratic game in the world. Yep. You either put up a number and get it done, or you don't. If somebody doesn't like the way you swing, the way you walk, the way you putt, the way you chip, the way your form is, whatever, it doesn't matter. If I can put up a number, you can't stop me. And that's kind of, that's what I want to hear about you, is that, they can't stop you. If you can get those numbers down at your age and prove some things about your research, your study, that's what I love about you. You're probably, and folks that are watching, he's probably one of the leading researchers in the world on nitric oxide and how it can be applied to your body to amplify every single piece of function that you have. And I want him to explain some of that. I could sit for hours listening to him because he can go off on 20 different areas. So we only got him for 40 minutes here, but I want to hear the primary things you've learned, not only about Cardio Miracle, but nitric oxide as well, the value of it, what you've researched, what you found, how it's impacting lives everywhere. You've shared with me before. I just can't wait for these people listening to hear and understand better why they're taking the product, why they should take the product, why the whole world should be on it.
Yeah. Thank you, Keith. That's very generous. Couple things I'd say, Mike, you mentioned ages, and I'm in that above 6'0" range. I don't like to tell my body my age. Mentally, I don't buy into chronology. I just don't. I don't think my body gives a damn how many times the Earth rotates the sun. It just doesn't care. It doesn't care.
That's great.
And a calendar is just a model. There's no reality to a calendar on paper. It is only a model that tries to erect a framework around the act of the Earth rotating, circumnavigating the sun. That's all it is. And how your body responds to that circumnavigation isn't a function of paper. It doesn't care. It doesn't have a dog in the fight. True. And so how we think, one of the ways I would start this, you guys probably know this golfing coach. He wrote a book called The Fearless Mind. He's a tennis player at BYU.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And this comes down to you gentlemen are phenomenal athletes. You've proved yourselves at the highest level of your respective sports. And so massive props to that. And to me, I've regarded, elite athletes all my life because they have a connection to their body that is different than other humans. Generally speaking, they pay attention to their bodies in a way that's different than other humans learn how to pay attention to their bodies. They listen. They give the body input and they listen to the output. And they're not afraid to get the output. You give the information to the body, whether it's in the form of training or in the form of nutrition, food, hydration, and then maintain an objective basis, kind of as an observer rather than as a participant, but being a mental observer of your body in kind of in a detached way, so you don't have so much of an emotional response to what the output is. You guys will understand this, that regardless of the level of your athletic ability and how long you've been in a sport, that 1/3 of the days of your training and your playing are going to suck. 1/3, which has nothing to say about whether you're fit, whether you've trained for years before. High performance is not a consistent reality. Otherwise, golf would be boring to watch because you'd play the same all the time.
So you're talking a little about Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he seems to be boring and playing the same every week. His feedback's probably good. He's on the track you're talking. So keep going.
Well, but the point is that because there's some psychology to fitness, right? And there's some psychology to life, that being willing to accept the current condition of your body. See, as like when I was in, ninth grade and have start the PE year in class with my coach, the coach was saying, here's the basis of a condition that we're going to train to, and some mechanical performances we're going to train the body to. How many dips can you do in a minute? How many push-ups can you do in a minute? How many chin-ups can you do in a minute? And I underperformed. I wasn't happy with my performance, but I knew based on that day that he said, we're going to train for this for the year. You'll have another shot to see what kind of numbers you can put up on the board at the end of the year. And we're going to train for this. And so you live a different way. If you have an objective like that, then you live a different way. You look at nutrition a different way. You can look at, certain foods that aren't going to fuel my body that would be detrimental. And I could say, well, as an athlete, I don't eat that kind of food. It's not a challenge. It's not a challenge. I don't have to make a decision of how I'm going, the food I'm going to eat or what I'm going to do, because if I identify as, here's the kind of person I am, I'm an elite athlete. So here are the choices I make. But so how does that relate to the conversation of Cardio Miracle? What is it, and why should anybody care to listen to what I have to say about it? One is that some years ago, after I had multiple surgeries on both shoulders for multiple times to repair rotator cuff injuries, recurring injuries, about lost the use of about 70% of the use of my right shoulder because of failed repairs. And I faced that kind of reality of what would it be like to lose 70% utility of, functional utility of an arm. And to me, that was just not acceptable. Had a final repair that actually turned out to be good, but it was a transition stage between that, looking at that, what looked like a possible reality, a possible outcome, and what I was going to do about that to retain my fitness or to try to keep my fitness. I was doing CrossFit, CrossFit training before CrossFit was a thing. And after this last correctional surgery, the outcome of which was going to determine whether I was going to have a functional use of my arm was a tough period in my life anyway, for other things that were going on. And I had never been a runner. I mean, I skied. I lived in Idaho. I skied Bogus Basin. They had night skiing when I was in high school. Dude, we're skiing. It was a 45-minute drive. I'm going to work, wow. And then I'm working till 6, and then I'm skiing till 10 every day of the week.
Wow.
So, and the season pass was like $60. Okay, we're in. So my brothers and I, we did a lot of night skiing. Played basketball, Mike, and this is why I didn't, pursue basketball, because like the coach said, Stan, I can't let you play and let you ski, because there are guys that are playing 100%. They're fully dedicated to the sport, and you're splitting your time. So he says, you got to make a choice. I said, see ya. I'll do the skiing. So, but anyway, and so this time I came out of the surgery and hadn't run, but I couldn't use my waist up body to do any kind of training because of the delicacy of the healing process with this shoulder. And I just didn't want to screw it up, or add a possible injury. But that put me on a path to originally just walking. This is in the wintertime, and just walking. I'd go out at night because there's a connection between my mental health and my body health. I think it's called our neck. But anyway, but I had some psychological health that was also conditioned by my physical health. But as I started with walking, and then that turned into running. And I came home once. I actually began to see some improvement in my time. And I remember coming home once and thinking, I wonder if there is a time, if there's some competitive senior times that, I could fit into. And this is was early 50s. And then as I was wondering about that, I wondered about Roger Bannister and this fellow who broke the 4-minute mile, which was unheard of. It was crazy. I mean, if you look at the shoe technology back then, the club technology back then, I got a good friend right now who's in Scotland golfing. I'm telling you, he's not using the original clubs to have a good time, right? And that skill level and performance, based on Bannister's time frame, I think Hawker's that kind of an athlete, but a much different frame. He's not 6 foot plus. Hawker's a small guy.
How tall are you,
looks
Stan?
like a 6'5". 6'5", and so I'm a bit of a Clydesdale, and my running weight is like maybe 209, and that's pretty trim. So, but the point is that I came home when wondering, I thought, a mile is a finite distance, and it's a finite number of steps. I can number them. How many steps do I need to take at a specific distance around that 400-meter track to nail a mile? So stride rate, stride length, what do I need to do to get to 4 minutes? Because I was either audacious or stupid enough to think, my body doesn't know the difference between it and Bannister's body. It doesn't, other than what I tell my body about it. Right. In the basketball world, one of the things, Mike, that impressed me so much about Jordan is that he was able to totally bifurcate his past performance from his present performance.
The greatest shooters have the shortest memories.
Yeah.
And that's what a blessing, not to have gauge your current performance based on your past performance entirely, right? So I just, I adopted this mentality that if Bannister could do it, then I could do it, because it's a finite distance. There's a stride rate and a pace and so on. And it's probably because I didn't know enough about running, because I hadn't really done any of it. But I adjusted that because what I actually want to do is run a 4-minute mile, because I really seriously, I don't think that the body really, it doesn't have a dog in the fight about how we calculate chronological age. One way of looking at our internal systems, get down to some scientific and biological conversations, is the function of glycolysis, right? The processing of sugar, and sugar specifically in the blood, is a process by which we age. That is an aging process. It is that is a process by which tissue, not necessarily ages, but it loses it. That's a process by which tissue loses its capacity to perform over time. Is there something we can do about that? Either to interrupt that pattern for periods of time, or to slow that pattern, because we're all living, and that's a process. So one of the things that, just to boil this down, Keith, one of the conversations that we had, I remember you asked me a question, well, how can we engage people in a conversation, not necessarily about cardiomiracle, but about their health? How do I do that? And I think the answer I gave you at the time, one of the questions I asked people is how fast is at what speed does your blood travel? How fast is your blood? What's the viscosity of your blood? And if people don't know the meaning of viscosity, I mean, this relates to the liquid characteristics of a substance, right? The more viscous the thing is, the thicker and slower it travels, the liquid, right? And the less viscous, then the thinner it is and the faster it travels. The blood is a liquid. It's a liquid organ. It's also a connective tissue. Think about this: is the blood is a connective tissue that that is intersecting and interacting with your entire body all the time. Think about that type of a communication system and the intelligence of that organ. Blood is a liquid organ and is connective tissue, because it's not only delivering information to every cell in the body, it's getting feedback from every cell in the body. And the blood is entirely connected and communicating system up and down the chain all the time. And it has an input, it has an input route and it has an output route. It has a full route and an empty route. It has full, we're bringing data in and intelligence in, and then we're taking garbage out. We're moving stuff all the time. And the viscosity of our blood has everything to do with the health of our blood. One of the definitions of death is blood speed. The slower your blood travels, the more proximity you have to death than you have to life.
Interesting.
The speed at which your blood travels through your veins defines your proximity.
Wow.
On a scale of vitality or lack of vitality, of resonant energy or lack of, or diminishing energy. And because the speed at which blood travels, and this would make sense if you think about it, blood travels basically in planes through our blood vessels. So at the center of the blood flow, blood moves faster than it does at the circumference of the blood vessels. If you think about it, doesn't it make sense? Because you've got friction at the edges, right? You've got friction at the edges, and there's a reason for that.
Well, the middle of the river is flowing faster than the sides.
Exactly. And so our blood, those are the hemodynamics. Those are the dynamics of our blood through our vessels. So the slower the blood is moving at the circumference, the slower it's moving, at the center, the slower it's moving at the circumference. Mm-hmm. Because blood has very, very different levels of speed through the vasculature. Moreover, the communication, the levels at which, and this is mathematical. This is a mathematical model that our blood speed is calculated at and can be calculated. That there are levels of blood that travel faster. Just like as you said, you can break up a river. You could say, well, here in the 3 feet, here's the main channel. This 3 feet, and this is traveling fast. It's about 6 inches out from that. It's traveling at a different speed. 4 inches out from that, it's traveling at a different speed, and you can calculate that. And that depends on what's happening at their circumference. But for example, in my circulatory system, if I have in my blood river, if I have stones on the edges instead of edges like on a water slide at a water park, I'm having a very different experience. My blood is having a very different experience. I'm not going to have little tidal pools. If I have a slip and slide, a water slide vasculature. Whereas if I have platelets and lipids and other things attached to the vascular wall, my blood's going to have a very different dynamic system, dynamic flow that is going to slow the overall speed of the blood down, and as well as interrupt what it's supposed to be doing at the edges. So the speed of the blood is critically important to the health of the blood. Because as you would imagine, we've already identified that at the circumference of the blood flow, we have friction because there is a surface area between these cells called endothelial cells, which really are the one of two cells that have direct contact with the liquid blood organ. And they're called endothelial cells. They're the communication interface with the blood. They interpret data. What's in the blood? And they regulate the data that's in the blood compartment and its transference outside the blood compartment. So when we talk about blood flow, it's not necessarily just the flow of the blood through the vasculature, it's the flow of the blood outside the blood. It's the perpendicular flow of information from the blood outside the blood vessel wall. How does the blood transfer the oxygen, the nutrition, the hydration, the chemical and electric impulses through the vascular wall as it's traveling? that's the blood flow, that perpendicular move is so important. In these endothelial cells that are this inner lining of the blood vessel, they have tight gates and tight junctions and loose junctions. And so they have very specific areas where they can let in large pieces of information like an oxygen molecule, and smaller pieces of information like proteins, amino acids, etc. And so if we have a laminar flow of blood, that is a flow of blood that is unobstructed in the blood vessel, we're going to have blood that moves faster because it's unobstructed. And if you see in your water analogy, in metaphor, the blood that encounters objects is going to cause anything other than a laminar flow. We're going to get all kinds of dynamics that will actually slow the blood, and this happens in the human system. Moreover, our vasculature isn't it's not like a 400-meter track. It does have some straightaways, but it has some curves and things, but it also has some bifurcations and forks, and you can understand the friction at the point of the juncture of the vessels.
Oh yeah.
And what kind of hemodynamics that creates, what happens after the blood encounters that and flows after that. So it's a fascinating environment. Our vasculature in the blood and how they interact is fascinating, but it comes back to blood speed. So the optimizing the viscosity of our blood is necessary.
And does Cardio Miracle aid in that viscosity,
yes,
aid in that speed of blood? And before you answer, which we all are proponents, so I want to hear you say it.
Yeah.
But I know you're also a believer that good or proper foods will heal most things in the body. And here's a little news break. Cardio Miracle is full of good foods, isn't it?
It's full of great foods. Yes. The whatever Big Pharma says, the body heals itself.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, other than some carpentry, occasionally that's necessary to put a plate and a couple of screws into something to align something to it so that it heals straight as opposed to not straight. But the body heals itself. So just to finish up on the thought of the blood viscosity, the speed at which it moves affects its temperature. The slower the blood moves, the colder it gets.
Wow.
Depending. But understanding that optimally blood whose viscosity is optimized also operates at very specific temperatures. Every organ operates with blood at a different temperature. For the liver to operate optimally, the blood must be at a very specific temperature, and that temperature gradient between the liver and the kidney and the lungs and the heart, it's all different. And so, again, coming back to blood speed and blood viscosity, it matters because the temperature of your blood is a function of the speed of the blood and its relative viscosity and how the blood interacts with your organ tissue, because liver tissue is different than adrenal tissue, that is different than pituitary tissue, that is different than vascular tissue. It's all different. But the blood knows how to handle all of that. That's built into the system. The intelligence is built in. So the question is, how do I support and optimize? How can I help support and optimize the nature, the natural characteristics of blood when when the body's really healthy? And so one of the value propositions is that not surprisingly, the surface area of the blood vessel where so much of the blood dynamics is going on is the place where a molecule is created that affects the blood's viscosity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the body being a phenomenal composition of art and machinery, this is fantastic because we have a remarkable hydraulic system in the body. The surface area of our blood vessel, which has direct contact with blood, has a specific cell that creates, an endothelial cell that creates a very specific molecule with the right, if it has the right fuel. The molecule it creates is nitric oxide. And that molecule regulates the health of the vessel. its ability to dilate and contract, to handle the flow of a liquid whose stream is not constant, because the blood that comes out of the heart isn't in a constant stream. It comes out in boluses. And that's why our arteries are built with musculature. Arteries are muscled so they can flex and contract, just like your esophagus actually functions in a contractual way to move food down. It contracts to move food down. It is not a static organ. Our blood vasculature is not a static organ. It is kinetic, and it responds to the pressure that that goes into the system. We talk about blood pressure all the time. Well, where the hell is the pressure coming from? Well, the heart. The heart's moving stuff, and it pushes out a bolus of blood. And how our arteries, their flexibility and their response to that matters. Atherosclerosis is a condition of death, right? That's how people die, is their arteries, their blood vessels harden and cannot react to a dynamic blood flow. What happens? They'll burst, because it's just like having old pipes you're putting water through all the time. Eventually, if they're not built to handle a flexible form, a flex of liquids, then they'll burst. Our vascular system is much the same way. But again, so it's fascinating that the ability to maintain blood's health and to promote the blood's health, the characteristics of speed and viscosity and optimum oxygen content and communication is a function of how this single layer of cells, which is about the size of a 6 tennis courts, if you lay it out, Mike. I take your endothelium, which coats all your blood vessels and your lymph vessels, and I lay that out on a planer.
Wow.
It's about 6 tennis courts of material that is in direct contact with your blood. Call it 80 to 100,000 miles of roadway. But those blood vessels on the inside make this nitric oxide molecule. And if they're given the right fuel, which is arginine, it's an amino acid, arginine and citrulline. And this is very well documented science that arginine is the exclusive fuel that the endothelial cells, the internal lining of the blood vessels, need to produce this molecule called nitric oxide that maintains the viscosity of the blood and optimizes it, that helps regulate the temperature of the blood and optimizes it, and that optimizes the oxygen capacity of your red blood vessels. It actually optimizes the life of your red blood cells. Premature death of red blood cells results in what's called free hemoglobin. Hemoglobin that's unbound by the walls of the red blood cell. Free hemoglobin consumes nitric oxide at a rate 1,000 times faster than when it is bound up in a red blood cell. So if we have unhealthy blood, we have red blood cells that are dying prematurely. This unbound hemoglobin will consume an amount of nitric oxide 1,000 times faster than a healthy body will, which means that molecule, this magic molecule, nitric oxide, can't perform 1,000 other functions.
So Stan, tell me, there are 100 different nitric oxide products out there.
Yeah.
Why in the world am I going to put Cardio Miracle in my body? Tell me how the unique makeup of Cardio Miracle and its nitric oxide, assimilation is different than a Reds or some of these other that give give you just a blip of nitric oxide production, whereas this sustains it. Tell me how this is put together and why it's maybe a little better for you, maybe different.
Yeah, here's one big difference. If we take that endothelial cell that we talked about that produces nitric oxide and we're giving it fuel, that the gas, let's take a car as a subject matter to by which we can analogize the body. So I put fuel in a car, and the engine's going to function. I'm going to get some motion out of it. The function of hydrocarbon combustion is exhaust. There's an exhaust. There's an output from a hydrocarbon combustion, right? We extract energy if the hydrocarbon isn't completely clean, then I'm going to get the impurities out of that hydrocarbon in the form of exhaust, which is not healthy. You don't see people going around sucking on tailpipes,
Right.
in order to improve their physical performance, right? So when the endothelial cells make nitric oxide, the juice that that juices the body up.
Sure.
The body needs this phenomenal molecule. The outcome of that production is another molecule called peroxynitrite.
Yeah.
It's the exhaust coming out of the tailpipe of the endothelial engine that's producing nitric oxide that's making the body move. That's
a bad one, right? That's a free radical.
So so the peroxynitrate really is probably the most profoundly damaging reactive oxygen molecule in the body. It will fracture DNA. What we don't hear about in the nitric oxide world, the supplement world, is anybody talking about, well, what happens when your body produces nitric oxide? Because like all biology, it's a dual. There's at least a dual nature to it. The creation of a thing causes the death of a thing.
Yeah,
that's what happens. So part of the process of nitric oxide production is the exhaust from that engine is the exhaust of peroxynitrite, which is a very dangerous molecule. I mean, it has some functions because it's a biological thing. But if all I'm doing is long-term dosing on arginine, I'm killing myself. I might get a good body pump. But you talk to anybody who's dosed arginine on just straight up arginine for a period of time, they start dragging.
Yeah.
And the reason is because they're poisoning their body. You have some benefits from nitric oxide production, but the interesting thing is that in the cardiomiracle scientific literature, in our in vitro studies at Ohio University, what Dr. Malinsky found was that when human endothelial cells were bathed in cardiomiracle, that the nitric oxide production was immediate. The nitric oxide molecule production from these endothelial cells responded immediately, and those endothelial cells continued to produce nitric oxide for over 24 hours, which was a factor of 6 greater than anything he had ever seen in his life, and he was a world authority on nitric oxide. His lab was the first to actually measure the real-time production of nitric oxide in human endothelial cells. So the guy had spoke from a position of authority. So he sees that endothelial cells bathed in cardiomiracle explode with a very healthy production of nitric oxide over a long period of time, which he'd never seen before. He also found that when he was measuring for peroxynitrites, because that's the exhaust of the juice, that the production of peroxynitrites, Mike, the level was almost 50% lower than the mathematical expected calculation.
Right. Which
blew his mind. Now, this was for him like a Newtonian moment where the apple falls off the tree and he goes, damn, I've got it. So he sees this and calls John Hewlett, who's this fascinating, formulator of this, got the God download for this ingredient formula. And he calls John and says, how did you figure this out? We have been trying to figure this out for years. Is this ratio, the relationship between nitric oxide production and the production of peroxynitrites? Is it possible? This was the hypothesis he was pursuing. How can I produce nitric oxide and downregulate peroxynitrites?
Right.
Because this molecule, nitric oxide, is necessary for life. It's actually, it facilitates the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen. It is critical for breathing. We learned that in 2015, that breathing isn't simply a 2-molecule exchange, it's a 3-molecule exchange. And the molecule sitting between the carbon dioxide and the oxygen is nitric oxide.
Wow.
And so breathing, my fellow athletes, your VO2 max, your ability to intake, process oxygen and facilitate carbon dioxide expellation is a direct function of nitric oxide production. So even if you increase your ability, and we learned this, I mean, you put guys on the sidelines that are, basketball games, football games that are breathing oxygen like this, you can't force more oxygen into your blood than your blood is healthy enough to accept.
Right.
So you're breathing stuff in and you're breathing it right out. You can put people on respirators and kill them by feeding them oxygen, because just because you're feeding the body oxygen doesn't mean it's bioavailable.
That's right.
So optimizing blood in this case with nitric oxide with CardioMiracle, what Malinsky found with it, oh my gosh, I have a massive uptick in a very healthy uptick in nitric oxide production sustained over a period of time, which you've never seen before, something beyond 3 hours. And this downregulation of peroxynitrite and I spoke with Malinsky multiple times about this, that he told me that'll fracture your DNA. It's that bad. It's a bad boy. It's the Blackbeard of the sea in the ocean of the body. It's just, it doesn't care. It'll kill anybody. So great. So you don't hear anybody else, Keith, to this point, nobody else, no other product. I don't care if it's vegetables, nitrates that they're talking about, anybody else that's got a nitric oxide supplement, no one will talk to you about peroxynitrites. It's either because they don't know, which is dangerous, or they do know and they're not telling you, which is dangerous.
Yeah.
So the benefit of what John's put together, and the thing that Malinsky did not do, he says, hey, I found, here's the dynamic. It's this beautiful ratio of nitric oxide to peroxynitrite production and downregulation. How's that happening? He hypothesized in the article he published. He says, I think it's the synthesis, and that's the verb he used, or the noun in this case, but he used the verb as well. The synthesis of the ingredient list, Keith, where he says, look, there are two components to this ingredient list. There are these amino acids and vitamin D in CardioMiracle. I have arginine and citrulline and a few other amino acids that are the fuel for nitric oxide production to the endothelial cell. And then I have this grocery list of antioxidative foods and botanicals and herbs, anti-inflammatory, antioxidative foods. He says, it is the synthesis of those two separate, what he deemed separate ingredient lists. It's the fusion of those two things that must be the cause of what I'm seeing here, of this ratio that I've never observed before. And so we've learned since then that he didn't write about that other than it was a synthesis. And then the CardioMiracle study that was published in August of 2022 in Frontiers of Nutrition concluded, because it was a in silico study, and John asked that team to take a look at every nutritional component in every ingredient and determine the interaction of every mechanism of action, every nutrition component in every ingredient, and determine its interaction with every other component of every other ingredient. And then to identify how that orchestra of moving parts interacts with the body as a whole. Not the body as how does this interact with the red blood cell? No, how does this operate, not only with that, but as the body as a whole, as a system.
Yeah. And
so it was the first study of its type to do that. And the basis, the data well of that research was the human genome in over 17 million scientific articles of, with relevant information, both qualitative and quantitative. It's an absolutely fascinating study. So we come out of that with some, remarkable knowledge.
So is it safe to say that those who are looking to increase their NO production, they know the value of it, but you can't just pump in arginine, massive amounts of arginine and citrulline, because then it produces these peroxynitrites that are problematic. I mean, maybe even a negative to your overall,
There's
system.
Keith, there's no maybe there. That's a definite, you have to downregulate peroxynitrites or they'll kill you. It's that easy.
So, we've got to educate the world of NO, and this desire to increase its production as to the safe and effective way to do it, where your body's actually gaining the benefits of nitric oxide, but not going backwards with damaging your DNA. And so it's really exciting. I guess Malinsky, I'm really curious. What does he think? Does he think that what are the pieces that have made Cardio Miracle this piece that actually creates this longer lasting NO in your body and down regulates peroxynitrite? Is it just the antioxidants and the things you've talked about? What are the pieces of Cardio Miracle that kind of makes it magical?
Yeah, well, interestingly, the dosage of the amino acids, it's a dosage thing. We actually saw an explosion of data as a function of the COVID scenario over the last 3 years. There were numbers of studies that came out. One of the from the leading cardiologist at Harvard actually said that the COVID-19 thing was an endothelial dysfunction disease. So the operation of that virus was to damage endothelial cells. Well, what happens when you damage endothelial cells? Well, you have they get dysregulated. That means you're not producing sufficient nitric oxide. That means the permeability of the vascular wall increases. That leads to pneumonia, sepsis, all kinds of just crazy stuff. But what we also learned, because of that learning, that the endothelial cells were being the primary target of that viral experience, that focusing on how do we heal the endothelial cell, there were a number of studies that came out on that point. And I would highlight one in 2021, there was an Italian team that had a number of people who were diagnosed with this severe COVID situation. They were hospitalized, ICU. To half of that clinical cohort, they gave 6 grams of arginine a day, 3 grams of arginine twice a day. And to the other half, they did something else that didn't involve arginine. They had some placebos, those kinds of things. But the people that received the arginine dosing, they left the hospital. So the conclusion of that study, and this was one that really captured my attention in the fall of 2021, was that, look, they said arginine reverses the damage to the endothelial cells.
Wow. Okay.
And so here's the thing. How do you keep your endothelium healthy? With Cardio Miracle contains a remarkable matrix of very specific amino acids that have been optimized and now demonstrated through both in vivo and in silico studies to optimize nitric oxide production from endothelial cells, which again, that goes to the larger conversation we had about the characteristics of your blood, viscosity, speed, temperature, optimizing that. That'll get you in terms of improving your lifestyle. Your lifestyle is a function of how well you feel. And instead of looking at symptoms of, whether you're sick or not functioning, Cardio Miracle can actually give you some lenses to look through to see the symptoms of your health, how good you're feeling. Because this is a stimulant-free, the only stimulant that nitric oxide in Cardio Miracle is that it'll help your body produce, it'll increase the oxygenation level of your blood. And people say, yeah, I feel better when I take Cardio Miracles. Well, guess what happens when you take the plastic bag off your cells and they can actually breathe? Try running a 100-yard dash with a plastic bag on your head and see how it feels to be hypoxic. And if you can't
hold that thought, Keith.
Right.
I got to run. I'm going to let you finish up with Stan. My son has called from school. I got to go pick him up. But you guys keep going. Stan, I could talk to you for hours.
Let's do it again, man.
We're going to talk, and we can cut and grab, and there's so many pieces of great information. We're going to keep going, Stan, if you've got a minute, because I really want to.
Yeah. Keith, I'll talk later.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
Awesome stuff. Okay, bye.
Okay, Stan, I've got several kids that have taken the jab. I don't know how much we can say that won't get cut, or they'll kick us out because we mentioned the vaccine or what have you. But I'm worried about them, and I want to know if there is benefit to taking Cardio Miracle, if it can help are there spike proteins that really create a challenge down the road? Does Cardio Miracle over time have an impact on that? Can it? What can we add? What would you tell your children that have taken the vaccine gone down that path, and you're worried about them. We're seeing a lot of people drop dead everywhere now with different heart challenges. I believe Cardio Miracle is a piece of it. If it is, explain that, and then tell me how we might supplement or do other things with Cardio Miracle to help those who have gone down that path of vaccine.
Yeah. Well, so let's be agnostic about the topic and just talk about it chemically and biologically. So, and it's not a function. It's not a Cardio Miracle thing. There's Cardio Miracle is simply it's a powder of products. It's a powder of food. It's a powder of amino. We got a bag of amino acids and botanicals in foods. So that's and we put a label on it, Cardio Miracle, for purposes of ease of communication. So it's food and amino acids. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And the dysfunction condition that we've seen, which has a striking resemblance or a striking relationship to the point in time when a biochemical bioweapon injections began into the human system as a remedy or an inoculation or a vaccine to vector for the CoV-2 virus clade. There's a very, if you follow Ed Dowd, there's an unmistakable relationship between injection of that substance, whatever the hell is in it, because we still don't know everything that's in it. But we do know that it's a gene therapy because Moderna admitted in its securities documentation this is gene therapy. It's not a vaccine. This is a gene therapy. Okay, so it's not a vaccine. And actually, the recent Ninth Circuit court case, the Los Angeles School District case, which the Ninth Circuit issued an opinion on within this last month, and our good friend was one of the primary litigators on that case, concluded that, the question of whether this substance that was injected into everybody, whether it's a vaccine, is a reasonable question. We're going to reverse the district court's decision to dismiss this case by saying that it is a vaccine, and we're going to allow the plaintiffs that have sued the school district that were fired because they refused to be injected, we're going to allow their case to go forward. Because this is a question of fact. Is this a vaccine or not? That's a question of fact. And so, phenomenal case that is changing the legal landscape, Keith. That's important for this conversation because for the years that we went through this, we couldn't say that without being excoriated,
Right.
Thrown off the air, whatever, called names by the closed-minded cul-de-sac thinkers. So the fact is, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed the district court and said, you have to take evidence on this case, whether this is an actual vaccine or not. And by the way, the producers say it's not. They say it's a gene therapy. So in reaching that conclusion, there were two Supreme Court cases that the Ninth Circuit said actually we're going to interpret those correctly. They've been misinterpreted for years, misapplied for the last few years. We're going to allow evidence into this case about determining on a factual basis whether this thing called a vaccine is actually a vaccine. And this is massive, Mike, Keith, because if it, when the conclusions come out of the trial based on the evidence, that this is not a vaccine because it did nothing to interrupt infectivity and did nothing to interrupt transmissibility. And that's what vaccines do.
Yeah.
And it didn't do that at all. And in fact, the producers will say, well, that's not what it was built for. No kidding. So when it comes back, that the conclusion is that, gosh, this substance in this substance doesn't meet the definition of vaccine because it doesn't do what vaccines do, as described both statutorily and medically. Who cares what the CDC says? You can have your opinion in the World Health Organization. You guys can have your opinions, but pardon me. Well, they don't drive the conversation. They don't
Right.
govern this outcome. The conclusion is this, Mike, is that then we will be able to see that if this is not a vaccine, factually, then the liability protection that all the producers have been enjoying under the CARES Act and the act in 1986 that Reagan signed that gives producers of vaccine total liability protection, that will be irrelevant because it's not a vaccine. So at that point, we can say, okay, all you guys, we can actually now have an honest conversation about health. So as it relates to those bioweapon injections, because they're a gene therapy, we know that it actually led to a case, Mike, again, this is a good friend of mine, Todd Callister, who is an international lawyer, phenomenal guy, actually took a case to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in Colorado, because the case that he was pursuing and fighting is, gosh, if Pfizer makes a substance, Keith, that is injected into my body as, because they say it's going to do a thing and I don't have informed consent because they don't tell me what's in the thing. And as a function of that injection, it changes my DNA because there's mRNA substances that'll change my mRNA. Then I've been changed as a function of a publicly traded company and changed by a patented product.
Mm.
Am I then owned in part by that company because that patented product is now in my system and changed me? That's a real legal question.
Yeah.
We crossed the bridge on animal cloning a long time ago. We've crossed the bridge on plant cloning a long time ago. And genetic changes to plants. Everybody knows the GMO question. That's been going on a long time.
Yeah.
Well, so what about genetic engineering of humans? Because, the guys, the Cargills of the world and Monsantos of the world that change the genes of a seed own the seed. They patent the seed. And if you want to plant that thing, you got to buy it from them because nature doesn't produce it.
Right.
And by the way, those seeds are sterile. So you have to buy the seed every year because the plant won't produce a seed that will reproduce the plant.
Oh, crazy.
So the last domain of biology replication and ownership is the human. And that's the case that Todd Callender is handling. So getting back to a solution, right? Yeah. I'm just saying this is not an esoteric conversation.
No, right, totally right.
And I wanted to bring some legal realities to it.
Yes.
That because this has been a fight. This has been a legal fight, and it's a language fight.
We couldn't even have this conversation just
right.
a year ago. You couldn't even have it. It'd be shut off.
Right. And one other case. So there's the Los Angeles School District case, which is a phenomenal case, changes the legal landscape just within the last month or so. And our wonderful friend, George Wentz, phenomenal lawyer, was the lead litigator on that case. God bless George. There's another case that the Supreme Court issued that Brightline that overturned what in the legal world we know as the Chevron case. The Chevron case was decided in 1984 at the U.S. Supreme Court level and held that the administrative agencies of the executive branch, the EPA, the FDA, the National Relations, Transportation Board, the Commerce Department, all these administrative agencies, the Supreme Court held in 1984 that the courts had to defer to their opinions, the regulations that they write about, the EPA writes about air contamination, water contamination, all the regulations that have nothing to do with legislation, just bureaucrats that write regulations that govern our lives. Nobody put them in, nobody voted for them. They're appointed, right? So we have no recourse. the Chevron case stands for the proposition the Supreme Court held that the courts, the judicial branch, had to defer to the decisions and the opinions of the executive branch, because all those administrative agencies sit under the executive branch.
Right.
Which sounds weird. We've got kind of quasi-legislative body in the executive branch, but I thought the legislative branch was the check on that.
Right.
Right. So in this Brightline case that came out just within the last month or so, the Supreme Court said we're overturning the Chevron doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
Now the courts are independent. They're not obligated to refer or to defer to the opinions, etc., of the administrative agencies.
Right.
The judiciary is independent. It will make judgments on the evidence, period, which is a massive decision. Massive decision. So again, this is the legal environment in which we've been operating for many years. But in the context of the COV2 argument, these are very substantial arguments, because it's the Health and Human Services Administrative Agency, the HHS, where we have the CDC and the National Institutes, the NIH, all those guys sit under the HHS. Those are administrative agencies of the executive branch. Those were the people that were saying, gosh, wear 5 masks. I mean, you start to think that there's a relationship between wearing masks and how many razors you have on your Gillette blade. If it's 3 blades, 4 blades, 5 blades, is it actually a better shave? I don't know. Fauci thought, gosh, if you increase the number of masks, this idiot, this charlatan, says, oh, it's better to wear 2 masks instead of 1. It's like, dude, and we're talking, and you're calling this a vaccine.
Yeah.
These were known lies, and this is coming out. But so that's the legal world. And just some background on the question of, so we were served a lie. We were served a lie that this thing that was called a vaccine was a vaccine. It's not a vaccine. We weren't told, hey, this is gene therapy. Why don't you come and get some? This will modify your genes. Come and get some. The public would have been a lot more reluctant to shoot the adults up, not to mention the kids. So back to the point of health and what can we do, because there were some toxins in those, to put it mildly, in those injections. What can we do? Well, the body has an immune system, which is remarkable. How do I support the immune system?
Yeah.
How do we do that? How do we support it? And one of a foundational substrate of the immune system is vitamin D. And this is going to sound old and tired because vitamin D is so boring. It's been around forever and it's cheap. How do I increase the vitamin D levels in my body so that my immune system is more active and reactive, so that it can respond properly? Well, there's a great white paper that actually was part of the Cardio Miracle Science, a third paper that concluded that an in silico study that determined that there's a matrix of proteins that surrounds a vitamin D generator organization, let's just say, and communicator. And so there's a cell in a combination of proteins, a network of proteins that communicate the level of vitamin D in our bodies. And this study determined that that the definition of dysfunction is the deficiency of vitamin D. I'll say that again, but reverse it. That a deficiency in vitamin D in the human system is the definition of human system dysfunction. That is, we can't function properly biologically and chemically if there's a deficiency of vitamin D in the system. Which is, again, this is a first time discover, a way of identifying a fact and putting it in language that hasn't been said before. So the question then becomes, well, then if that's the case, then how can I optimize my level? How can I optimize my levels of vitamin D in my body? What's the best way to do that? We learned through Cardio Miracle scientific literature specifically that long-term production of nitric oxide that these nitric oxide molecules communicate. We talked about this earlier. Communicate to fat cells. The fat is an organ. It's not bad. It's necessary to live. So be nice to your fat. Just learn how to regulate the stuff. You need fat. We need fat to live. It's a necessary organ in the body. It gives us a lot of benefits. So support that system. Help that system. But the nitric oxide speaks with this fat organ. And fat cells, among many good things that they do, they actually store inert vitamin D as a hormone.
Yep.
And nitric oxide, this molecule, which is the fastest molecule in the body, and there's not a barrier in the body that can stop it from crossing that barrier. So you'll find it in bones, you'll find it in every organ, you find it everywhere because it can transverse any barrier, which is a fascinating characteristic.
Yeah.
But so it communicates, this nitric oxide communicates with fat cells and says, hey, we're deficient in vitamin D, release the inert vitamin D. Because the body is self-regulating.
Yeah.
So there's that slide. But if you're deficient in long-term bioavailable nitric oxide, that communication will never happen. That communication for your body to produce vitamin D from stored inert material, it's hanging out in your fat cells, but it needs to migrate. It needs to get over to your liver to be hydrolyzed there. And a few things beyond that to actually produce the end product of bioavailable vitamin D for your body, which has nothing to do with sunlight exposure. For those who live, above the, at longitudes and latitudes that, where the sun it disappears for 8-9 months out of the year, guess what? The body has an alternative system of creating its own vitamin D that has nothing to do with photons.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
It's a chemical reaction. So nitric oxide and molecular correspondence, nitric oxide speaks to fat cells. Hey, release the inert vitamin D material. We'll convert it for the body's use for vitamin D. So now we can build the substrate of the immune system and the communication, the lines of communication that the immune system needs to build and maintain so that it knows how to respond to foreign agents. And so Cardio Miracle has been demonstrated scientifically to do just this. That it's just, I shouldn't say Cardio Miracle, nitric oxide, long-term production of nitric oxide, which is separate from Cardio Miracle. That's a bunch of stuff in a bag. But if you can get your body producing sufficient long-term nitric oxide, then one of the inevitable outcomes of that is higher levels of vitamin D in your body. And an inevitable outcome of vitamin D levels, healthy vitamin D levels in your body, is a healthy immune system. Because we talk a lot about chronic diseases like Parkinson's and cancer and Alzheimer's and diabetes. Folks, that's a dysregulation of a body, of a biological system, namely the immune system. It's responding to consistent inflammatory information when it should be shutting off. It's an out of control immune system. And so the Cardio Miracle from a general perspective, Mike, for those athletes, and I think everybody, one of my sayings is like life is the sport, so that makes everybody an athlete, right?
Sure.
Everybody's an athlete because life is the game, man, and you're in the game. So you want to bench it or you want to get on the field? How do you want to play? How do you want to play this game? Because it's the sport. The life is the sport, and you're in it. So let's go. Nitric oxide, John's composition of ingredients, which Malinsky recognized as a marvelous synthesis of amino acids, which are very specific fuels, idiosyncratic fuels for the production of nitric oxide from endothelial cells. It's that sharp of a blade. Citrulline, which is metabolized into arginine, and arginine, those are the exclusive fuel that we can regulate by ingestion to get that data to the endothelial cells so they produce nitric oxide in a way that's plentiful and bioavailable. Because if nitric oxide's half-life, I mean, it's as soon as it's produced, it disappears, realistically, because of its utility, and because, in large part, because a lot of it gets converted if you're not buffering the environment in which nitric oxide is produced. Is creating peroxynitrite. Peroxynitrite is the combination of nitric oxide with another molecule called superoxide that are magnetically attracted to each other. So nitric oxide is produced in the same function that superoxides are produced. And so they race together like a, like a couple of kids on a hot date. So their attraction is inevitable. It's magnetic. And the combination of nitric oxide and superoxide is peroxynitrite.
Yeah.
So that's an inevitable consequence. But what we want to do is, so we can downregulate superoxides, then the production of peroxynitrite goes down because there's more bioavailable nitric oxide to go do what is the other things that it's going to do other than encounter a superoxide molecule in the neighborhood. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So nitric oxide and vitamin D production, they go together.
Okay, so for a layman, what I've got guys out on the pickleball court that are 60 years old that have had heart conditions. Tell me why they should be putting Cardio Miracle in their body and whatever else, because I know Cardio Miracle is not the end all be all of total health and nutritional supplementation, but why should these guys be putting it in their body? I mean, you've laid it out pretty well, though. I mean, we're increasing NO production. We're helping to create a more supple, dilated blood vessel, so blood moves better and flows better. Nutrients can flow better. We can recover better because these nutrients are now getting to things. Tell me what else. Tell me if I'm going to sell my best buddy on, or the people listening. I mean, and you've done a great job already, but I just kind of in the best layman terms we can come up
simplify
with.
it.
What in the world? Why are we going to why do I want my friends to be on Cardio Miracle, and what can it do for their body long term?
Yeah. So here's another question. It goes back to blood, because again, a definition of blood, a definition of life, or I should say of death, is blood that does not move.
Yeah.
Your heart stops moving blood, you're out. Having a heart attack, you die of hypoxia. If your blood stops moving, you don't get any oxygen. It's over.
Yeah.
Totally. You're not dying of you have a heart attack, you're not dying of thirst.
No.
And you're not dying of starvation of a nutritional element. You're dying starvation of an oxygen element, and you've got a short time to solve that problem.
Yeah.
Is oxygen. And so at a very rudimentary level. So if I'm on the pickleball court and I'm having it, man, I sure get tired fast. Again, I just go back to put a plastic bag on your head. Don't even run. Just see how well you do. Just sit down and see how well, how long is it before you start feeling stressed. And if your cells are in a condition of hypoxia, which means they don't have enough oxygen, what do you expect them to do? You can ask that, and the result will be a pulled muscle.
Yeah.
The result will be a sprained ankle. The result will be brain fog. The result will be, I can't breathe when I walk up the stairs. Well, yeah, you have a lack of oxygen. So this comes back again to blood. Moreover, when vitamin D levels are low, nitric oxide levels are low, because our blood vessels, as we age, just the production of nitric oxide diminishes. We age. People eat lousy. They don't exercise. They don't maintain their health. So guess what? Systems break down. And they start feeling poorly. I wonder if there's a relationship between that. So can you rehabilitate endothelial cells?
There you go.
Yes. Yeah, because you have cells dying and recreating all the time. Trillions. All the time. So can you rehabilitate your endothelial cells? Yes. Can you rehabilitate your cardiovascular system? Yes. Can you rehabilitate muscle growth? Yes. How do you do that? Well, what's the lines of communication? What information do you need to get to tissue, et cetera, to affect those positive changes? Well, one is oxygen. You start with oxygen because lack of oxygen is death. So abundance of oxygen is life. That's very rudimentary, but it's true.
So true. And so true in the way, just as a anecdotal daily function, getting out, living life, how you feel, how you want to get out of the bed in the morning, what you can accomplish, how you can move. It's so critical, just that little uptick, because I'm playing with guys that are 5, 10 years younger than me, and they're pooped. They're tired after 2.5 hours in 100-degree weather. And I'm just curious, why can't I mean, I don't know, what better example is there than me? I mean, I'm pushing, I'm going, I feel great. Why can't you sustain? And, trying to tell them you need to be on this product, it's just such a hard, we're actually trying to sell people on the value of Cardio Miracle right now.
So here's another question. Another question, Keith, is, gosh, you can ask your buddies on the golf field. They say, you're probably feeling this way because your blood is an inflammatory agent rather than an anti-inflammatory agent.
There you go.
Your blood is probably communicating inflammatory messages, which causes your body to tense and to expend energy to try to fight stuff that may not even exist. You're in a fight. You're in a remedial mode that is never ending. So you can have, try to golf well by gripping that club too hard.
Yeah.
Relax. How do you get your body out of a state of a constricted inflammatory state? Well, when your blood is thick, when it's not properly oxygenated, when its temperature isn't properly regulated, it turns into an inflammatory agent rather than a remedial agent. So you said, look, man, let me help you solve this problem because, dude, you've got slow blood, man.
Yeah, that's it.
You got slow blood. So, it's like asking, there are so many analogies, but it really comes down to very basic moving parts for those folks, Keith. It's blood is slow and it's inflammatory. What do you expect?
So tell me, as you're dialing your own world in to hit this mile marker with the mile run, what are the things how do you go about using Cardio Miracle, and what else? I mean, I want people to hear that Cardio Miracle is one of the most foundational products best foundational products you can put in your body to get it to start functioning well. But there are other things that we can maybe add. And what are those things that you personally, as an elite athlete, feel are critical to maybe, in addition to, add whatever? What do you do in your life? I mean, really straight up, what do you add to be optimal? I mean, you want your body to function like, like nobody else's. Yeah. What do you do? Your cardio in the morning, 2 scoops, 2 in the afternoon, 2 in the evening. Yeah. I'm adding a little arginine at times. I'm also supplementing with vitamin D. I had oregano oil, whatever. What are your things?
So one thing I think is kind of funny, but for me, it makes a big difference. I don't put anything on my skin that I'm not willing to eat.
Yeah, I'm the same. I've never used sunscreen, and I've lived in the sun for 50 years, professional golf. Yeah. And I've been mocked by everybody as to, you don't use, and I've never had anything. Yeah. I've never had any problems. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I will not put sunscreen on my body. And now they're finding out, all kind of problems with it.
So one of the things I'd say with people, this isn't even fine tuning. There are lots of poisons that are that we buy in the name of shampoo, soap, lotion. It's all bullshit.
Yeah,
it's bullshit. You want to encourage the health of your epidermis, which is one of the larger organs of the body. And you put something on your skin is pervious.
It's just taking it right in.
If you're not willing to drink it or to eat it or snort it, don't put it on your skin.
That's right.
Why would you do it? So you want to put something on your skin, castor oil is good.
Yep.
Really good, high quality olive oil is good. It's phenomenal.
I love that.
The number of showers we take, and not just showers, but using soaps and detergents with artificial scents, artificial colors, ingredients that you can't even pronounce, and you won't look them up. Right? People won't look them up. Say, what the heck are you putting on your head? What the heck are you putting on your body? Thinking that you're cleaning your body. It's bullshit.
It is.
So scrap it. Scrap it. Because that's a way of polluting your system. And the more that your body has to fight a pollutant or a foreign agent, the less time it has to do what it's supposed to do in a positive way.
So many of these foreign agents, and then our body has to work overtime to just rid ourselves of those things.
Yeah.
When if we left them off, I mean, wash your face with water or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
baking soda. Baking soda.
Yeah, simple, clean things. That
don't use the mouth detergents. That stuff totally destroys the environment of your oral biome. Yeah, your oral biome. So get rid of that stuff. You don't need it. Use baking soda and salt. Baking soda and mineral salts. Yeah. There's a great salt that's produced out of Heber. Redmond salt. It's fantastic. You got all kinds of microminerals. The minerals that actually hang out together as a gang. Yeah. I mean, minerals hang together for a reason. They're found together for a reason. So you take them as they're found.
Any thoughts on Dr. Broner, his soaps? Are they polluted with stuff? Are they okay? Because they're mainly essential oils.
Yeah, no. So there are some really good materials, right? There are some soaps now that they have a really short ingredient deck.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, expunge all whatever masquerades with the label soap, but read the deck and then query, is there a relationship between what is in this deck, even if it's clean, if it's essential oils, etc., whatever. Take some time to determine whether there's any efficacy of using that to perform a function that it's not built to do. If you want to smell good, fine. Then get some oil, some essential oils, dilute it with some olive oil. You can do that, and you can get, that's old, that is old science.
Yeah.
Aromas and oils go back thousands of years. So of course.
My wife's actually used frankincense.
Yes, of course.
A little oil, and it's like not only healthy and healing, but it actually it's a nice.
Yes. Fragrance. So there are dozens and dozens of plant-based oils, right? And so as long as we're on oils, animal oils, omega-3s, omega-3s.
That's what's missing with Cardio Miracle too.
Yeah.
You do need omega-3s that we don't get in Cardio Miracle.
Yeah, and the best way to ingest those is through food.
There you go.
Fish is great.
Salmon.
If you're taking salmon, there's several studies that show the most. Make sure it's wild caught because So for folks that buy salmon in the stores, there's several studies that'll demonstrate that farm-raised salmon is really the most contaminated food in the store. Totally be careful about, be conscientious about whether this is wild caught. And if there's a brand that says, hey, this stuff is wild caught, check them out. Yeah. Just because it's printed doesn't mean it's accurate.
That's right.
So I eat mackerel.
Yeah, nice.
And anchovies. And sardines. And a lot of people think that's gross. Well, so here's just a short story. It's a funny story because I was talking to a Navy SEAL about, probably 3 or 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Navy SEAL who was a deep sea demolitionist. About nutrition. At one point in time, I was making a lot of freeze-dried foods, and he was eating my freeze-dried food meals and finding a lot of benefits from them that were based on macro science and stuff. And as we were talking, he's down in California, and we became good friends. And I asked him about his, he's retired. I was asking about his training routines, what he did for exercise. He says, dude, I train dolphins and porpoises. I said, no shit. Yeah, no kidding. I train dolphins and porpoises to activate and inactivate deep sea demolition bombs.
Yeah.
And he says, you come on out to California here, we'll spend a day with the dolphins and porpoises, and you will feel like you have worked out, because these things are just built.
Yeah.
They're yoked animals, they're nothing but just, and he said, I said, so what's the, how do you feed those things? And he says, oh, they eat mackerel and sardines.
Okay. Put it in your body.
I said, look, they're mammals, they're deep sea mammals, high tension. But if you do some research on those forms of fish, wild caught, the omega-3s are just off the charts. And the bioavailability of those omega-3s when you in a whole food composition, because that's how you should take it.
That's how it should.
Don't isolate the thing from the thing. Eat the thing in which the thing you want is.
Yeah.
So a whole food is going to function much better because there's a lot of things hanging together in that whole food with the omega-3s that will facilitate the bioavailability and metabolism of those omegas. And so, depending on whether people make fun of me because I carry a food bag. I got it right here all the time. I've got mackerel and sardines in my food bag all the time, in case I'm always ready, because I'm not going to eat crap unless I make a decision to eat crap. I'm not going to be forced to eat. So anyway, omega-3 is a big deal. And
is there any green drink that you feel is valuable? A super greens, an athletic greens, anything like that you think? Because Judy Mikovits, her whole thing is foundationally to start. Yes. For people that are beginning nutrition, they do nothing. Yep. They're out of shape. They can hardly get off the couch. She says, foundationally, put Cardio Miracle in your body. It does so many things. And then add a greens drink of some sort to that. And you've got a really good beginning.
Yeah, so athletic greens is is a very good product. And Dr. Mercola has a really good greens product. There are some other companies as well that have green products, that include lots of different types of grasses.
Yeah.
Because what you're really, I've got a good friend who has an algae company, that they make blue-green algae tablets. Yeah. And so that's great stuff. But what you're doing when you're eating greens, so think of it this way, when you're eating greens, is the green substance, the truth about the green substance is it's chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is an output. I'm taking it as an input, but it's an output. A plant produced it as an output.
Yeah, yeah.
The input to chlorophyll is HO2. Sunlight.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I love it.
And then that plant is connected to minerals through the soil.
Totally.
So when I'm looking at vegetables particularly, or greens particularly, what I'm looking at is I'm taking something in my body to unleash the energy that is the sun, the combination of sun and water and those minerals, because it's like a piece of wood that I put on a fire. What has happened to fire is the release of the energy that has been stored, that was the input from the sun and from the water.
Everything.
That combined as a fiber that we call wood. It's stored energy. Yeah. So I'm looking at food that's why the highly processed foods, there's no life in it.
Yeah.
There's no sun in that shit.
Yeah.
There's nothing in that. If something has to be fortified, guess what? It's worthless. And the fortification is bullshit. So,
which is 80% of what's out in your grocery store. It's 80%. Yeah. You can just never go to a grocery store and get healthy.
Yeah. So the point is with the greens, and Judy Mikovits is right, is that, but what we're looking to do there is greens are stored energy. Yeah. And what they do in the body through metabolism is there's a release of that energy.
Yeah.
And so ingesting sunlight is great. Water, sunlight, and minerals.
And that's
the great thing is, yeah, and skip the non-GMO stuff because they're monkeying with that.
Oh yeah.
So to the degree you can, pass on the non-GMO stuff, raise your own stuff, grow your own stuff. But what you're doing is you're ingesting a combination of naturally stored energy. It's like taking a new battery and putting it's stored energy. That's all it is. So look at food that way, and it'll change the way that actually, gosh, you know what? I don't think I'm going to eat that thing because it's dead.
Dead. And you have to put out extra energy to get rid of what you just put in. So you're not only not gaining energy, you're wasting energy.
You're losing.
And get rid of. Okay, give me your 1 minute Cardio Miracle.
Oh, well, it's just big. Well, before we go that, the other thing I would do is if you understand where energy in the body is generated at its very foundation, it's the mitochondria.
Yeah.
And that's not just humans, that's everything.
Yeah.
Everything that we would define as alive is energized by mitochondria, which are these little organelles, these little bodies that exist inside of cells. So they're the internal operations of almost every cell in the body has these energy producing engines, energy engines, guys, you find the root of those words, they're related. So how do I support the health of a mitochondria? And we've addressed that with Cardio Miracle. The formulation that has just come out, that was an issue, a conversation that John and I have had multiple times that we've had. What can we do to improve? Because John's always about progress and improvement, bless his heart, and making this a viable alternative and economically, as well as psychologically, simplistically, biologically, how can we make this formula easy and simple?
Yeah.
But to handle a complex problem in a complex environment, complex issues and complex. So support your mitochondria, and Cardio Miracle has some very significant fuel to do that.
Well, so as a side, I don't know why, maybe it's just me as wanting to love it better, but the new formula of Cardio Miracle has had a significantly greater impact on my body and how I feel for whatever reason. I don't know why, but they've added just 3 or 4 new ingredients, and the synergy again of that is making a difference for me. But I want your 1 minute gross salesman Cardio Miracle. I mean, concise to the average Joe. You're talking to some guy. Why do you take that stupid stuff? Why do you take Cardio Miracle? What's in Cardio Miracle that I can't get anywhere else? And you've only got a minute with them. What do you say to them? Yeah.
First of all, are you satisfied with how you feel? Are you satisfied with how your body feels? With how your body functions and its performance levels? Would you be interested in improving all of that with a really simple solution that's very simple to execute on? Because I'm not asking for 45 minutes a day. I'm not asking for 7 minutes a day. I'm not asking you to do.
So
you're already doing the thing. How you want to change your life, and one of the most dramatic ways is right here. It's right here.
Yeah.
It's right here, Keith.
Yeah, totally right.
So 3 big deals for optimizing your health, optimizing your lifestyle, how you feel, how your body treats you, how you treat. Number 1, what you eat.
Yep.
If you fool with that, if you're a fool with what you eat, you're a fool, and you'll feel like it, and your body will tell you.
Yep. Your
body's telling you something for a reason. It's not an arbitrary message. What you eat, how you recover.
There you go.
Do you sleep? Optimize rest. Let your body recover, right? And number 3, do you move? It's very hard to find the relative importance to prioritize any one of those over the other, because those are non-negotiable.
Absolutely.
And the more rotations around the sun you make, the more there is a relationship between that and the moon. That, hey, when the moon's up, you should be sleeping. When the sun goes down, rest, because the body, like any other thing, the organism needs a recovery system. So I would boil down to this: what you eat, your recovery, how you sleep, and how you move. You have to do those three things. And the eating thing, this thing right here, this relationship between your hand and your mouth, you change that, you'll get a dramatic improvement. And one of the simplest ways to dramatically improve the sleep and the motion pillars of health is this with Cardio Miracle, because you can't find you can't find the food on the grocery list in Cardio Miracle. No, you can't find it. It's not available in the quality and the doses there. Spend the money, buy the food. You're buying it anyway, and you can't combine the amino acids that Cardio Miracle has that have been scientifically demonstrated. You can't. So it's just food. Put it on the grocery list. Just put it on the grocery list. You're not supplementing, you're eating.
Yeah.
This is food. So just put it on the grocery list and be done with it.
Well, I love that you mentioned movement. Tony Robbins, I've done all his seminars and he says youth is movement. And I can tell you, I get out of chairs fast. I move fast. And I don't ever want to get up and, slow. I want to move. And youth is movement. And when I'm 80, I want to leap out of things. I want to play pickleball fast. I want to jump out of my golf cart and get on the tee. There's something about that movement. And what's funny is Cardio Miracle allows your body to feel better. Your joints heal. The inflammation's different. So the food, like you're talking about, is so critical. Sleeping, so you're recovering. And, all those pieces. I just love how you encapsulated that, because I think those are the three huge things we all want in life. And Cardio Miracle can touch on all of them. And if you want to start, if you want to get going, if you want to kind of just begin a process, what better way than like you say, it's so simple. It's just so simple. And there are things we can do to add, from working out to this, to that, all, hundreds of things we can do. But you have to start somewhere and get a foundational level of like health in your body. So you can then, if you don't feel good, you're not going to want to add the workout component, the running component, the other components, because you'll quit. You hurt too much. But if you can get good food in your body, if you can then sleep and recover and feel okay, you're not going to feel great after you've not worked out for 5 years, but you'll sustain those efforts to a richer life, because Cardio Miracle allows that inflammation to be reduced. And so you feel alive again. And so that's why, to me, it's such a big thing. It gives you the chance to start again, to begin again. And I'm all about life beginning again, from whatever your religious beliefs are to your health beliefs. We got to be able to start over. And I think Cardio Miracle gives us that opportunity. I can't thank you enough. We could talk for hours and hours. We've already gone, oh my goodness, so far over what we were going to do. But I love being with you. We're going to do it again. And we're going to have fun. We're going to bring the newest information to people. We'll get more concise. This will be brought down to a podcast that's maybe 40 minutes. And but we're going to do this more, and we're going to make sure people are going to get excited when you're on, because you can bring the newest, latest.
We have got so much. There's so much good stuff, Keith. So I look forward to it. I love spending time with you, brother.
Oh, I just thank you for the time today. What a great time. And you're a good man. To give this much time to us, Stanford. Thank you so much.
It's great to be with you and Mike. Gabe, thank you for your help, brother.
Yep. Thanks all.
Cheers.